Welcome back to the Dodom. It's been a while. So there's going to be so many rumors and gaming news stories coming out in the weeks leading up to E3 and Summer Games Fest 2021. I'm back to give you the too long didn't read on the biggest gaming news stories, albeit not always on time and littered with biased opinions. If you like gaming and hearing people talk about gaming, subscribe because this channel comically has one of the worst analytics. Also, I'm trying to hit 3K subs soon, so please help. But speaking about something as mutated as the algorithm, Biomutant released today. The game was gaining a ton of traction from showing off a pretty impressive gameplay reveal synopsis, boasting to be a mishmash of genres like Breath of the Wild, Ratchet & Clank, and Kung Fu Panda. Well, the reviews are in and they do not look pretty. There's actually a bit of drama surrounding these reviews, as people have pointed out that it's a different taste of opinions. This very divide in the criticism of this game was pointed out by THQ Nordic in defending themselves on Twitter. Anyways, THQ would like you to know that Biomutant is certainly special, and from the reviews that I've been seeing and at least the gameplay footage I've been watching, it's definitely something unique. There's nothing else like it with having, little rats run around. Although it didn't take long watching the dev breakdown of gameplay that this was giving me an Assassin's Creed style vibe. Have a map with a bunch of markers for loot and areas that you need to take from enemies, conquering the map as you go from marker to marker, and there's not really much of interest in between. A horse game, as I like to say it. With having a team of just 20 people, the landscape and gameplay certainly look pretty. There's not really much in this map between areas, even though it's pretty to look at. And the game has points where it'll set you back and forth between 1,500 mile distances just to be sent somewhere else fetch quest style. Sounds a lot like Assassin's Creed, I don't want to play it. And the combat looks flashy and there's a lot to do. They likened it to Devil May Cry and Batman Arkham style combat. And the synopsis is while there's a lot to do here, the weapon modification system is fun and the character creation for stats is really nice, but it doesn't all quite deliver in terms of feedback and overall gameplay feel of the combat. These are all the main complaints that people have had. The worst offender, in my opinion, is having such a ridiculously large map without much really going on in it between the set markers that you have to go to conquer a spot or take some loot. I had my fair share of that after playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So if you like the style and you're okay with a little jank because it's a small team, go check this one out. I'm gonna hold off and see if they try to support the life of this game or have plans for patches and stuff like that. It's important to note that the PS5 version actually had its 4K output disabled due to stability issues. It's unfortunately the only platform that has this, so that's definitely something to take into consideration if you're going to pick this game up for the PS5. I get that people are concerned that it's too harsh on them to expect them to deliver on the promise of straight up saying this game's like Breath of the Wild because it's a team of only 20 people, but it's a full retail $60 game and certain things just feel rushed. On to our next story. This is a really interesting one. So there's a rumor going around that Square is publishing another game from Team Ninja to do a Neo or Souls-like style Final Fantasy game called Final Fantasy Origin. Team Ninja, if you don't know, has a long history of working with big publishers like Square and Nintendo. They're the team who did Dead or Alive, the 2000s Ninja Gaiden series, Neo, and basically killed Metroid. This isn't the first time that Square and Team Ninja has worked together. Square producing Final Fantasy Dissidia NT from them, which is the sequel to the PSP fighting game Final Fantasy Dissidia. So this time around, instead of working on a fighting game, rumor has it that it will be a Souls-like third-person action adventure game. I guess the idea was that they were like, hey, take Neo but for Final Fantasy. With a name like Final Fantasy Origin, people are expecting that it'll be remakes of the original NES or Famicom games, seen in a completely different likeness, I guess similar to what they did with Final Fantasy VII. And if we're actually going to go on a trend where we remake all the other Final Fantasies, but with a more modern approach and action RPG formula to the gameplay, I'm all for it. The day I'm playing Final Fantasy IV with Final Fantasy remake graphics is the day I cry. And the final piece of news that we got from Monday, Demon Slayer The Hinokami Chronicles, published by Sega, yeah, big shocker, a non-Bandai Namco anime game, has been set to have a 2021 release date. So yeah, the English voiceover dub has already been done. Hopefully we'll get a release date and a bigger reveal during this year's E3 where Sega will be attending. Actually, we got some more news from Monday. Arc System announced the majority of the songs that will be in the full soundtrack for Guilty Gear Strive. For those of you unaware, the soundtrack in Guilty Gear Strive is immaculate. Bullshit blazing. is so great, but we learned some important things. I can't believe Potemkin's theme wasn't called Society. The soundtrack with over 16 songs is available with the Ultimate Edition of the game, which comes out June 8th along with the Deluxe Edition, giving you access to the first season pass, which has 5 characters, 2 stages, and a bunch of color alts. And if you're not familiar with the Guilty Gear franchise, every character plays like a different game. So 5 characters in a season pass is pretty damn nice. And if you're a pleb and you get the standard edition, then you have access to the game 3 days later, June 11, 2021. I'm excited to play Guilty Gear Strive. It's a lot more streamlined and simplified with its mechanics than the older games. It's really meant to be a nice entry point for scrubs like me. So that was it for Monday's news, but there were some stories I missed last week that I want to talk about now. The Nintendo Twitter has been rampant with tweets promoting Skyward Sword, and it makes sense. The game comes out in just like a month and a half, mid-July, but there's been a decent amount of salt and drama, and I won't lie, I play a part of it because Skyward Sword being an HD port of a 10-year-old Wii game with upscaled graphics, with finally allowing the option for players to play the game using the right thumbstick to control the sword instead of using motion controls. I originally lost my shit the first time Skyward Sword HD was announced. I ranted like a man-child about how there's nothing there and this doesn't warrant a full-price port. But admittedly, I held my breath because there's still time that we could get some extra content. Well, we finally got to see what some of the content is, and you have to pay for a $25 amiibo to access it. This amiibo looks beautiful. I want it, but its actual use in the game is not that impressive. You can just teleport back to Skyloft and teleport back to the original spot that used it. So it's a nice little quality of life change. Why they didn't just put this in the main game, I don't know. But although it was the first one to crap all over Skyward Sword HD when it was announced, I still actually do think that there's time for extra content to be revealed before the game's released. We have all of E3 to get through before we know everything about this game. It's just another one of Nintendo's weird marketing. Like, look at Miitopia with the makeup feature being a huge potential time sink, justifying the price for the port, or at least taking a look at the port. We didn't know just how powerful the makeup feature was in the game until just a month before the game came out, where Nintendo just shadow dropped a demo. All I'm saying is Nintendo's been having weird marketing lately, well, over the past few years, where things have just been shadow dropped and big extra content details is withheld until literally a month before release. I am still incredibly skeptical for Skyward Sword HD and that the extra content will actually be anything significant. Mainly I'm hoping that there's a lot of quality of life changes that they just haven't talked about yet. I don't think Fee has to tell us every time our Joy-Con drifts. The last story I missed that I wanted to talk about that happened a bit ago is all the Overwatch 2 news we got recently. Now, this is actually a much bigger story of stuff I want to talk about because there was a lot I missed. So Overwatch 2 still not having a release date, got shown off a fair bit this year at BlizzCon and having its own developer livestream. Big changes to the game's balancing was shown off, like that they've moved the game to a 5v5 format. And if you're like me and haven't really played the game since 2017, 2018, reminder that there is now a role lock in the game. So the team of 5 consists of 2 DPS, 2 support, and 1 tank. Man, I feel like such an old head that I have to say the difference between attack and defense DPS, which is the main thing that they were trying to get across about Overwatch 2. Overwatch changed dramatically from having no hero limits and 4 classes in the beginning to now having a role lock of 2 from 3 different classes. Now with Overwatch 2, everything they learned from the first game, they want to use to start fresh in terms of balancing. With only 1 tank, I'm sure that the engagements will be a lot faster in the game. You know, less barriers and shields and stuff like that. But they also had to up the play potential that the tanks have now that there's only 1 on each team. Things like giving Reinhardt 2 fire strikes, being able to cancel your charge, and the overall heaviness factor that they added to tanks to not be moved so easily by other heroes' abilities. When I used to play ranked Overwatch, I was a tank main, and seeing these changes, this makes it look like there's even more pressure on the tank, and that you have to be able to play even more wildly different playstyles. But in watching the developer stream, I started to realize why this game was taking so long. Because on face value, it doesn't look that much different from Overwatch. Overwatch is a nearly 5-year-old game, so some graphical fidelity increases, like textures and details and objects, are expected. Mind you, people crap all over the character design of Overwatch. I don't think it's that bad. I can understand why it's not significant or distinguishable from the originals. But anyways, why is this game still not out? What's taking so long? Pretty much every single facet of each character and overall gameplay engine changes are being looked at. An example being brought up was the actual initial acceleration speed of every character being slowed down. This was to make movement or strafing more predictable and easier to land shots. But they also said that it was so slightly that it's a significant but not an extreme balance change. but that is just an example of what lengths the team is looking at in terms of the actual gameplay balancing. And here's where a lot of the other Blizzard Activision stories that I didn't talk about comes in. When Overwatch 2 was announced, I was incredibly confused. It was basically shown off to be the same game with graphic updates, a new hero, dedicated PvE mode, and a new game type being pushed, which the developers have noted plays a lot like Control Point. As time went on, we saw more maps and stuff like that, but it was promised in the beginning that Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2 would be crossplay, and that all your cosmetics from Overwatch 1 would be brought into 2. This was a point that Jeff Kaplan had fought for, who was no longer a part of the team, that players would be able to carry over their cosmetics to the second game, as well as potentially getting a discount if you own the first game, and of course crossplay from Overwatch 1 players, you're just not having access to the new game mode and the new heroes. But now with the number of changes that happened, is this game really still going to be in crossplay, or do you have to like queue for Overwatch 1 games from Overwatch 2 if they still support that? I don't know, that would be really weird. These are completely different builds of the game now, so crossplay is looking less and less likely. Maybe that's why Jeff Kaplan unexpectedly stepped down leading up to the release of this game. Seriously, what the hell happened? From the outside, Blizzard Activision does not look good. There was a large amount of layoffs, with the large majority of the esports media division of Overwatch being cut because thanks to COVID, they said they figured out how to manage the Overwatch League without needing to rely on live shows. They gave them a nice little gift card to Battle.net to buy some skins for the game that they've been working on that they got kicked out suddenly. But anyways, with all these layoffs and Jeff stepping down and what looks like will be a full-priced sequel, ground up, different game, we obviously don't know the full story with what happened with why Jeff Kaplan stepped down. All I'm saying is from the outside, Blizzard Activision doesn't look pretty. But anyways, the main thing I was disappointed is how come Jeff Kaplan didn't get to say like a goodbye, you know? The guy was so active in the community and he got to say a goodbye on a forum board, but it would have been nice if he got to, you know, address it on video or something, akin to when Reggie Fils-Aimé retired. I remember when some of those first developer updates dropped about crazy ass hero changes and stuff, man, those were sometimes as hype as like Nintendo Directs. Hopefully they can capture that level of community engagement and hype that they had in the Jeff Kaplan early days of Overwatch. I'd definitely be willing to give Overwatch 2 a try with all these balance changes, because again, the game doesn't look that crazy different, but it's just a massive overhaul to all these different balance changes that they've been testing to make a more fun and engaging game. Just trying to make Overwatch the best it can be, which you love to see it. Hopefully Overwatch 2 won't be riddled with anti-consumer microtransactions now that Pappy Jeff is gone. But anyways, that'll be it for this Dodump. It was a long one. I finally got to touch up on stuff that I haven't talked about. Hooray for biased gaming news making its return. Y'all just got dumped on. Bye-bye.